So today's our last day. I wanted in the morning, I'll go through some of the stages. There's 9 stages of sustained attention to attaining serenity. And so even though there's much more to explain to you about concentration, I will skip over some of that because we just have a short time. And I think it's very helpful to at least get some idea of what the 9 stages are so that you can see that it's that developing deep concentration is really a process that occurs over a period of time. It's not something that you sit down and then, you get. Sometimes we may have, very good meditations where we've been more concentrated than we ever have been before, but that doesn't necessarily mean we've attained serenity or, because serenity involves really quite a stable mind, and we're able to keep that level of concentration, as we continue to practice. Whereas, I don't know about you, but, most of us have we may have what we call a good meditation session. And then the one after that is what we call a bad meditation session. In other words, we're, thinking about pizza and the beach and, everything else. Okay. So, so I think it's helpful to know something about the 9 stages. Also, was I going to say? So we'll do that, and there's really so much more to explain about concentration, but slowly, And as I mentioned, the first day, you take this home with you, you do it, and just remember that you don't have all the conditions for a serenity retreat, so you can improve your concentration definitely in terms of your daily practice, but don't have high expectations for everything. Yeah, and also. If you do serenity meditation every day, I wouldn't make that the only meditation you do, because it's very important to really get an understanding of the general Buddhist worldview and all the other kinds of topics that the Buddha taught, the other kinds of attitudes and emotions and so forth that the Buddha is leading us to generate. And His Holiness is, he speaks about this a lot, saying that our mind is quite a complex thing. So just doing one meditation is, one style of meditation is not going to develop all the different qualities that we need to develop in order to become a Buddha. Okay? And so especially, some people get really into developing concentration, but then if you have a problem and somebody criticizes you, then you don't know what to do, except fall back on your old behavioral patterns, which up until this time haven't worked. Yeah. And so for that reason, it's very important to really learn the spectrum of teachings and be able to apply them to our daily life. Okay, so that our spiritual practice is not about having fantastic experiences and transcendent experiences while neglecting what happens on a day-to-day basis. So of course, the end part of our path, we want to transcend samsara, but we have to learn how to be a good ethical human being in samsara in order to transcend samsara. Okay, and we have to understand what samsara is in order to want to transcend it. Yeah. So there's quite a bit to learn. And also developing the bodhicitta motivation for our practice is incredibly important, because we can do our Dharma practice for our own benefit, or we can do it for the benefit of all beings. And there's a big difference between the two. Okay? So we want to make sure that we really open our heart and expand our heart to include other living beings, not that we just get concentration and go into our deep states of samadhi, because what's interesting in this is that the beings who are born in the formless and form realms, remember I was saying there's 3 realms of beings, they do so by developing deep states of concentration. But those other realms are still within samsara. And so when the karma runs out to be born there, then you're back down in the desire realm again. Yeah, there's no liberation. So concentration alone doesn't bring liberation. Yeah, we have to develop all these other parts of ourselves. We have to develop ethical conduct and renunciation and the aspiration for liberation and love and compassion and bodhicitta and, of course, wisdom. So there's, a whole... how do I say, wide open universe of things for us to learn and to put into practice. Okay? So I think having that perspective is very helpful, so that you don't become a very narrow person, and especially I think what's important in America and in the West in general is we always want the highest, most transcendent teachings. Okay? So that we can have some far out experiences and so on. But we don't want to learn about basic ethical conduct. Yeah? And so teachers will come and, the advertisement is, this is a very rare special teaching of the highest level. Come and get it, and it plants good seeds in your mind. And that may be true, but then if the teacher in the process of introducing the subject says, and, it's good if you take the 5 lay precepts to stop killing, taking what hasn't been freely given, misusing sexuality, lying, and taking intoxicants, then people go, why should I do that? My whole social life depends on intoxicants. And that's how I meet people. Yeah. And aren't we supposed to, hook up? Yeah. We had one young woman come here, and she was talking to another young woman who had stayed here and was really practicing well with the precepts. And the new woman came in and they were talking. she said, oh, but we're both young. Aren't we supposed to be hooking up right now? And it's like, and the first one said, good luck. Yeah. So, you do what's normal, quote, quote, going around hooking up, but what do you have to show for it afterwards? Maybe an STD, I don't know. But, people want exotic things, and, then the teacher says, well, don't lie. Well, why should I abandon lying? It's good. I do it for other people's benefit so that I don't hurt their feelings. Yeah, isn't that the reason why we all lie? Yeah, I'm doing it out of compassion so that I don't hurt their feelings. Yeah, just like Bill Clinton. he lied out of compassion so he didn't hurt Hillary's feelings. And so he didn't cause turmoil to the country. Yeah. I won't even talk about the present president, and lying. I mean, that's beyond the beyond. Okay. And then, taking intoxicants, like I said, many people, that's their whole social life. How are you going to go meet people? Yeah, you want to date somebody. Yeah, so you either do a dating app or you go to a bar. I don't know about you. I'm glad I'm a nun. But the idea of doing either of those in order to meet somebody is just like, oh my goodness, like what kind of relationship are you going to have if that's how it starts? Anyway, okay. The idea is that we have to integrate our spiritual practice on the ground level with our life and what we do day to day. Yeah. And, get our life in order and develop a mind that stops harming others, especially with our mouth, especially cheating other people or whatever. Yeah. And to become, a kind-hearted, somebody who wants to help others and who does help them, somebody who's generous, somebody who doesn't fly off the handle every time somebody criticizes them. Okay, so there's just basic things, that are actually not so easy to do. As we all know, when we start to try and do them. Yeah. And, but these are the things that we have to start with and build our meditation practice on top of those things so that we have the integration with our life and we have our formal sitting practice. Yeah. And we don't neglect one for the other. Okay, that's quite, I think, important. There's a story that Tibetans love to tell about somebody who went up to the mountains, to meditate in a cave for years and years, and develop single pointedness and, was known as this great meditator. And one day he came down to the village because he needed to get some supplies. And he was in the village and somebody said something mean to him and he exploded. Yeah. So the Tibetans like to tell the story about, just because you go up to the mountains and you stay alone, what are you really doing with your mind? Okay. So they have another story too about a meditator in a cave who, he was meditating for so long, his beard grew quite long, and the mice made a home in his beard, when he was in single pointedness, and, his beard grew and the mice, started nesting in there. And when he came out of his samadhi, he was not very happy and got quite mad at the mice. Okay. Tibetans love stories like that. Okay. So let's start with our recitations and a little bit of silent meditation. Oh, one more thing before we do that. I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you, because today is the last day, that, when you leave here, your mind is, believe it or not, quieter than when you came. Yeah. So sometimes it feels like, your mind has just been like, there's a marching band inside. Yeah. But that's what happens when you start to really look at your mind. It's not that things are getting worse, you're just noticing them more. But you are quieter. And so when you leave, don't just get in the car and turn on the radio and turn on the hip hop or jazz. I don't know what's popular anymore. But yeah, I'm kind of out of it. But yeah, but don't just kind of get right back into over sense stimulation because it'll totally drain you. Yeah, totally drain you. So stay kind of quiet. And now that you have a habit of doing morning and evening meditation, when you go home, continue that habit. Yeah. And you can shorten your sessions if you need to. But, now that you've had, 2.5 days? So just keep on. It's better to, to do something every day to really increase your spiritual practice, because your mind and your heart need nourishing just as much as, if not more than, your body. And we don't miss meals. Okay, so we shouldn't miss nourishing our heart through meditation practice and through Dharma study either.
So let's cultivate our motivation. And since the best motivation to have is one of bodhicitta, aspiring for full awakening, so that we can be of the greatest benefit to all sentient beings, then it's important to create the causes for bodhicitta. And that relies a great deal on generating great compassion. Compassion being the wish that beings be free of dukkha, unsatisfactory experiences, and also their causes, the negative karma that produce them. And to generate compassion, we have to care about others. And to care about them, we have to see them as endearing, as lovable, as heartwarming, as worthwhile. And to do that, we have to see how they're kind to us. And we also have to free our mind from attachment to friends, aversion to enemies, and apathy towards everybody else. So there's a lot of qualities to develop there, a lot of ways in which we need to reform our attitudes. And it starts with one very simple thing, which we already know intellectually, but haven't necessarily put in our hearts. And that's that everybody wants happiness and wants freedom from suffering as strongly as I do. There's no difference among us in that respect. And because there's no difference among us, suffering is something to overcome, no matter whose suffering it is. And happiness is something to create the causes for, no matter whose happiness it is. And so to really let that sit in our mind, And of course, it rattles our usual approach, which is my happiness is more important than others, and my suffering hurts more than others. But because we're all equal in wanting happiness and not suffering, there is really no good excuse for putting ourselves first. And there's also no good excuse for saying that we are unworthy of happiness and putting ourselves down either. So try to build an open-hearted, caring concern for all beings that will help you in your daily interactions with others and will also help you eventually to generate the bodhicitta motivation. Okay. So there's a lot of lists concerning the 9 stages of sustained attention. If you like lists of things, Buddhism's definitely the religion for you. Starting with the 3 jewels and the 4 truths and going upwards. Okay, so we, like I said, the 9 stages are 9 levels in which we deepen or cultivate our concentration to get to serenity. And there are 6 powers we cultivate along the way and 4 types of attention that we do. I'll just go through the 6 powers first to give you a little bit of an idea of the kind of qualities that we need to develop for concentration. So the first power is hearing. So we learn the teachings on the method to cultivate serenity and then learn how to place our mind on the meditative object that we've decided on. Okay, the second power is reflection. And so this is repeated reflection on the meditation object so that we can stabilize our mind on it. The third power is mindfulness. Mindfulness here is very closely related. Actually, it's the same word as remember. So we need to remember our meditation object by repeatedly bringing the mind back to it. So hearing, we got an idea about the object. Reflection, we got a little bit more familiar. Mindfulness is what really fixes our mind on the object because we have to remember what it is. Yeah, and keep the mind on it. So mindfulness is very important for developing stability, which is an important quality in concentration to keep the mind one-pointed. Okay. The fourth power is introspective awareness. And so this one is like a little spy, and it checks to see if we're still focused on our object of meditation or not. And introspective awareness also sees the faults of discursive thoughts, afflictions, distraction to sense objects, and it doesn't allow the mind to roam. Okay? It acts in conjunction with mindfulness to keep the mind on the object and to bring the mind back if we get distracted. Okay, the fifth power is effort. Yeah, and so we have to exert some effort in order to do the practice and to monitor our mind and to develop the concentration. And then the sixth power is complete familiarity with the five preceding powers, okay, and with the meditation object. Okay, so those are some of the qualities that we want to train the mind in as we go through the 9 stages. Okay, so let's look at the 9 stages. The first one is called placing the mind. And so here we identify the object of meditation. It's called the observed object. And we place our mind on it. So it might be the breath, it might be the visualized image of the Buddha, it might be love, okay, whatever our object is. And so to place the mind on it, we have to withdraw our mind from sense objects. Yeah, and so this is why it's so important in the break time not to be engaging with so many sense objects and having so much sense stimuli, because that just gets us in the habit of things changing all the time and having something new and interesting to look at. Yeah. So I wonder now, with technology the way it is, if it's going to be harder for people to develop concentration, because we've gotten so used to, whenever people don't have anything to do, and even when they do have something to do, what do? They take out their phone and they check and see if something interesting has arrived or something interesting has happened. Okay, so we have to check our messages and, your sound bites and your emails, because maybe something really interesting has happened. How many times do you have something interesting happen? Or something enjoyable? Yeah, once in a while. But I don't know about you, but most of my emails are, can you do this? Please do that. I need advice about this, whatever it is. Are most of your emails like that? Or you don't do email, you do texting, but I don't have a phone. And I don't want one. Okay, so really, to develop concentration, we have to withdraw from all this constant hubbub, that we're exposed to. And I think also one thing we have to stop is engaging with advertising. Yeah, I think advertising is so harmful to us. Because it tells us what we should have, what we should do, what we should look like, and nobody is like that. Yeah, so it builds all kinds of feelings of not being good enough, not having enough, not doing enough. Yeah, it develops craving and clinging and attachment. So I think we advertising, finished. And yet, what are we hit with so much in our public life? Yeah, billboards. Yeah, you turn on you want to do anything on the internet. What do you have? Ads. Even you put on ad guard and these programs to take ads off, the ads still come. Yeah, they find some way around them. And then our mind gets distracted. And then this thing is, oh, there might be something interesting. Let's check about this and that. Yeah. And anyway, so we have to curtail that. Okay, so the first stage is just kind of getting the object, putting the mind on it. Yeah. And during this first stage, often it seems like our mind is just so noisy. But like I said before, it's not that it's noisier than before, it's just that we're noticing it. Yeah. It's like if you live near the highway, you stop noticing all the sound of the traffic. But if you go away for a month and then you come back, then it's really apparent to you. Okay. The second of the 9 stages is called continual placement. Okay, so initially our object was to, our purpose or our objective was to identify the object of meditation and draw our attention to it and not let it stray. Okay, and so through practice we keep developing by the power of reflection. We develop more familiarity with the object, and so we're able to stay on our object a little bit longer than we were before. Still, the mind, the time spent in distraction is more than the time spent on the object, but we're being able to stay on the object a little bit longer. Okay, even though our concentration is always interrupted by these, distractions. Then the third stage is called repeated placement. And so here the aim is to recognize when we've lost the object, because our mind is falling asleep or thinking about something else, and be able to reset the mind on the object again. So that's why it's called repeated placement. The mind wanders away, your introspective awareness notices it, you bring it back, you renew your mindfulness on the object. So in the previous stages, we weren't able to immediately regain concentration when our mind strayed. On the third stage, because of developing mindfulness and introspective awareness, it's easier than before to reset the mind and put it back on the object. So our meditation still isn't continuous. Okay, the mind's still distracted, it still gets scattered, yeah, but we're getting better. The fourth stage is called close placement. Okay, so remember the first one was placing the mind, the second one continual placement, third repeated placement, now close placement. Okay, so here, because we've developed familiarity with the object, forgetting the object happens less frequently. Yeah, and it's at the beginning of the session, we're able to generate mindfulness more easily. And remember, mindfulness is what puts our mind on the object and keeps our mind there. Okay, and so we're able to develop that initial mindfulness and keep it going more easily. Okay, the mind is beginning to draw inwards and not quite as taken with all the things we can get distracted with. But, we still have lethargy, we still have laxity, restlessness, okay? And so, concentration's still interrupted. Then the fifth stage is called taming. And here, because we've really disciplined the mind on the first four stages, it's much easier to stay on the object. And we can stay on the object almost continuously. Okay, so the power of introspective awareness stops the mind from wandering to destructive emotions and distractions. There's still some lethargy, there's still some restlessness, okay, but they're decreasing. But now we're starting to get what's called subtle laxity and subtle restlessness. Okay, so gross restlessness is when your mind's left the object to, think about an object of attachment. Subtle restlessness is you're on the object, but you can feel the energy underneath is just ready to go off to an object of distraction, usually an object of attachment. Okay, so you can feel underneath the mind isn't totally settled on the object. So that's subtle restlessness. And then a subtle laxity is there's stability on the object, yeah, but there's the clarity on the object isn't so good, yeah. So, yeah, you can stay on it, but it's the objects. We say the object's not really clear. What it actually is the mind perceiving the object isn't clear. Okay, the mind is a bit lax. Yeah. So those interrupt the focus, but it's much easier on the fifth stage to put the mind back on the object. And you begin to really get some sense of satisfaction from the meditation. Then the sixth stage is called pacifying. And so here we have a very firm determination that to overcome our distractions and our restlessness. Now you might have thought, oh, but before I was really determined to overcome them. But how many times in your meditation do you get distracted and your distraction is kind of interesting? So you want to think about it for a little while. All of a sudden, you think of, some person you dated years ago and then, I really wonder how that person is doing. Yeah, what their life is like. So we're not totally convinced that distraction is to be abandoned before. But now, especially, on the sixth stage, we're really convinced about that. Okay, and also at the sixth stage, any kind of resistance or dislike for doing the practice has really gone down. Yeah. As we all know, we have a lot of resistance to practicing, don't we? It's hard to get ourselves to the cushion. And even you get yourself to the cushion, you immediately think of something that you've got to do urgently that necessitates getting off the cushion immediately before the sky falls. And chicken, sorry. I grew up with both Chicken Little and Chicken Liver. So I get them confused sometimes. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Some distraction comes and it's like, oh, I'm sure I left the stove on. I better go check it or the house is going to burn down. Or, oh, I forgot to return this very important phone call. I better do it now. Of course, the person called 3 days ago. Yeah, but anything to get us off the cushion. So we have that kind of resistance. This is one good thing about meditating in a group. Yeah, is there's the group support so you don't get up and walk out in the middle of the session. Yeah, because people are supporting you to stay. And also, every time you get up and walk out, it disturbs other people. Yeah, and you don't really want to have the reputation in the group of somebody who has ants in their pants and is always making a lot of noise getting up and going out and coming in and so on. You grew up with ants in your pants? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So also on the 6th stage, the power of introspective awareness is increasing. So sometimes we can identify restlessness and laxity before they become really prominent. So that's really good if we can do that, because then we can, inhibit their arisal, and we don't have to bring the mind back and restore it because we prevent it from going away. The 7th one is called thoroughly pacifying. Okay, so here, if subtle thoughts or subtle disturbing emotions, attachment, resentment, and things like this, if these things manifest, it's very easy to pacify them. Okay, subtle laxity, subtle restlessness still come from time to time. So our focus is still interrupted. We're still not single pointed. This is on the 7th stage. Okay. But as you go higher on the stages, new hindrances appear. So here there's the hindrance of, well, actually we had this all along, but we didn't notice it so much, of we don't apply the antidote. Yeah, we have the distraction, but like I said, the distraction is interesting, or we don't notice the distraction, so we don't apply the antidote. Yeah. So here, even on stage 7, non-application of the antidote may still sometimes happen, but we're beginning to get a handle on it. The 8th stage is called making single-pointed. So here, as a result of mindfulness and of effort and introspection, laxity and restlessness don't interrupt our concentration. So that's going to be really nice. Okay, so after we sit down, we can immediately apprehend the meditation object and put our mind on it and keep our mind on it pretty stably, continuously, without so much interruption and distraction and falling asleep and so on. Okay, so a little effort is needed at the beginning of the meditation session, but after that, it kind of goes. Okay, and so here, single pointedness can remain for quite a while. The 9th stage is called placement in equipoise. Okay, and so here, our familiarity with the object is very strong, so our stability is strong. Our effort to maintain mindfulness and introspective awareness is strong, so we don't need to really generate a whole lot of it. We've kind of we may still have a little bit of this subtle laxity. And they warn a lot about subtle laxity. It actually is stronger, like around stage 6 and 7. But and the danger with subtle laxity is there's stability on the object, and there's some clarity of the mind, but the mind isn't completely clear. The mind is still fuzzy, not totally vivid. And they say that it's very dangerous at that point because it's easy to think, because you have stability and some clarity, that you've attained serenity. Yeah. And so if you start to think, oh, this is serenity, but it's only stage 6 or 7, then, you're not really near the aim. And it's so pleasant in this state, they say, because you're kind of, you're on the object, there's some clarity, mind is kind of spaced out a bit, but you don't even notice it. So there's this pleasant feeling of spaced outedness. Okay. And they say it's easy for meditators to get stuck in that and not progress. Okay. So here at stage 9, that doesn't happen anymore. The mind engages with the object completely willingly and easily, and just the wish to meditate is required at the beginning of the session, and then you're right on the object, and you can continue on the object without without any interruption at all. So they say the focus on the object is spontaneous, and single-pointed meditation automatically continues for a long time. Okay, the sense consciousnesses are totally absorbed, and so you're no longer, distracted or wanting distraction. Okay, now, even this 9th stage is not yet serenity. Okay, we still have a desire realm mind. Yeah, we haven't developed serenity yet. There's more to come. Yeah, so there's more things that we have to develop, such as mental and physical pliancy and the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. So these need to be developed. Okay, so pliancy is a serviceability of the body and mind due to the cessation of physical and mental dysfunction. Okay, and so it's a mental factor that we cultivate, and we're trying to cultivate it all through these stages. But here, on the 8th, 9th stage, and after that is when pliancy becomes really stronger and of much greater importance. Okay, so physical dysfunction has to do with the winds in the body, the prana, the chi, okay, and that make the body heavy, that make the body uncomfortable when we try and engage in virtue. Yeah, are you familiar with that? Yeah, it's just the feeling that the body is heavy, the body is, uncooperative. Okay, so that's physical dysfunction. So mental dysfunction prevents taking delight in eradicating the afflictions. So mental dysfunction has to do with having some discomfort or some resistance, I should say. Okay, so our mind isn't totally with it. So we still suffer from these, and pliancy is the antidote to them. Okay. So through increased familiarity with concentration, physical dysfunction is overcome. Okay. And what's interesting is that this time the brain feels heavy, though not in a really uncomfortable way. But there is like a pleasant tingling at the top of the head, as if a warm hand were placed on your crown after your head was newly shaved. Okay, so this sensation occurs as the dysfunctional prana, the dysfunctional winds, leave from the crown of the head. Okay, that doesn't mean every time you have a tingly sensation on the crown of your head that this is what's happening. Okay, no pervasion. Okay, so that sensation occurs as the dysfunctional chi or prana is leaving through the crown of the head, and then immediately after that, dysfunctional mental states are overcome, and mental pliancy is attained. Okay, so mental pliancy is a virtuous mental factor. It's not neutral, it's a virtuous one. And it's a serviceability of the mind. It, enables the mind to be directed towards a virtuous object. There's a lightness, there's a clarity of mind. There's no longer any resistance, okay, or any hesitation regarding meditation. So that's mental pliancy. Okay. Mental pliancy, in turn, induces the serviceability of the winds flowing through the body, because the winds that power the afflictions have subsided. Okay. So you have the physical dysfunction goes first, then the mental dysfunction, okay, then the mental pliancy induces serviceability, because the winds that go with those mental factors that were just overcome when you overcame mental dysfunction, those winds now are no longer present and they're pacified. Okay, and so they say a wind of physical pliancy pervades the entire body, and the body's lack of serviceability for meditation is overcome. Wow. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. So this is physical pliancy, a lightness, buoyancy, and serviceability of the body that makes us able to use the body for whatever virtuous purpose we want, without pain, without fatigue, and without hardship. Okay? So you sit down to meditate, no aching back, no aching knees, no, I gotta move, I'm restless, no, your neck is tight, or your shoulders hurt, or you just feel like a ton of bricks. None of that. Okay. So that is physical pliancy. They say the body feels as light as a cotton ball, almost as if we could ride on our own shoulders. I always try and picture, how would you do that? Yeah. I don't know. So physical pliancy immediately leads to the experience of the bliss of physical pliancy, okay, which is a very blissful tactile sensation. So it's a physical sensation in your body that's very blissful. And the body feels incredibly comfortable and fresh, and we can use it for whatever virtuous activity we want. Yeah, nice, huh? Wouldn't that be nice? And then as concentration continues, there's a sense that the body is melted into the meditation object. And at this point, the bliss of mental pliancies is experienced. So this is a very joyous mental feeling. It's almost too joyous. Yeah, because when you feel too joyous, too buoyant, the mind isn't totally settled. Okay? So following this, there's a sensation again on the top of your head, similar to placing a cool hand on top of a freshly shaven head. Okay, before it was as if a warm hand were placed on your head. Now it's a cool hand. Okay, again, every time you put your hand on your head after you've shaved it and it feels cool, that doesn't mean that you've attained this state. Because with this stage, you don't even have to put your hand on your head. Okay, when this bliss, at that time the mental bliss decreases a little bit, and when the mind becomes stable again, there's the unfluctuating bliss of concentration and unfluctuating mental pliancy. And at that point, serenity is attained. Okay? So after you've gone through the 9 stages plus mental pliancy, physical pliancy, the bliss of physical pliancy, and the bliss of mental pliancy, okay, then your stabilizing meditation has been brought to fulfillment and you've attained serenity. Okay. Serenity, when we have the 3 realms of being, remember, desire realm, formless realm. Okay. Serenity is a preparation for the first form realm concentration. The form realm concentrations are called dhyana in Sanskrit, or jhana in Pali. Okay, there's 4 of those levels in the form realm, and each has deepening levels of concentration. To go from one to the next, or even to enter the first one from serenity, there's several preparatory stages that you have to go through. Okay, so it's really at that point you have to think about the faults of the lower levels of concentration and the benefits for the upper levels of concentration, and then in that way you can bump yourself up to the first dhyana, then the second, third, fourth, and up through the formless realms as well. Now, like I said before, those realms are states where beings can be born because of deep states of meditation, but they're all in samsara. So just being born there doesn't do it for you. Okay? The deep stages of meditation in the form realm, the first, second, third, fourth form realm, or the dhyana, the jhanas, those ones are much more useful for developing realizations on the path. Because in the formless realms, your mind is so subtle that you're completely gone. Yeah, those beings who are actually born there don't even have gross bodies. Yeah, so the formless realms, they attaining those can be good in terms of developing a lot of mental flexibility and being able to do all sorts of incredible things with your mind, but they're not so useful for developing the realizations of the path. The dhyanas are more useful for that. Okay, so so then people want to practice the dhyanas. But the thing is, you have to, and have a really strong motivation to attain liberation or full awakening when you gain the dhyanas, because it's said that it's so comfortable to have a mental state like that. Even though your body may be in the human realm, your mind can be in a dhyana state. And they say it's so blissful, so comfortable, that if you don't have strong renunciation or strong bodhicitta, boy, you just want to stay in those mental states and not make effort to be liberated because it's so comfortable. Okay, so this is why our teachers really recommend that we have, we spend time at the beginning of our practice for a long time developing the whole Buddhist worldview and developing a strong wish to be free of samsara, and developing strong bodhicitta, and developing some familiarity with the nature of reality. And to do all of that before we enter the jhanas, we can, improve our concentration, certainly, yeah, but before actually gaining the dhyanas, because otherwise it's so tempting to stay in them. And then, at the end of your life, you die, you shed your human body, and you get born in those realms. And then you enjoy some more in those realms until the karma runs out. And then, kerplunk, you're back in the desire realm with nothing to show for your bliss. Okay, so that's why it's so important to really understand what samsara is and to want to be free of it. Yeah, and to really want to have compassion to liberate sentient beings. Yeah, because we don't want to just have an upper rebirth in samsara and go kerplunk again. Because what they say is, believe it or not, since we can't concentrate now, we at many times in previous life, we have had perfect single-pointed concentration and been born in those realms. Yeah? So we've been there and done that. But we left out some really important elements, and so we're still here. Okay? So, yeah. Okay, so the picture on the front of the book, remember I told you this is how it starts out. Yeah, the attachment's crazy, the mind is lethargic, falling asleep all the time. We're chasing the mind. And then slowly it goes through these 9 stages. Yeah, and we wind up at serenity here, where the meditator is riding on top of the mind and the mind's completely pacified. 202 is a diagram of the 9 stages of sustained attention. But then there's an actual, here it is, on starts the bottom of 207, and then 208, 209, 210. And there, because on the diagram, we put the whole diagram in 166, you said, for the diagram? Okay, yeah. So there it is on 166 with the numbers, and then the key to where the numbers, what the numbers mean, starts on page 207. Okay, and so it tells you, it explains the diagram like that. Okay? Good. Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions and, again, maybe answers, no promises.
Hello?
Yeah.
On the diagram, halfway up, you've got your elephant, you've got your monk, your elephant, and your monkey, and there's a rabbit or something. Is it a rabbit? What, a fox? I thought it was a rat. I've seen it a rabbit in other tankas, but I forgot what it represents. Is that concentration or
No, I don't think so.
subtle?
Is that
something?
the subtle laxity?
Okay. On the back of the elephant at 14.
Right.
Yeah, the hair represents subtle laxity.
I've found that my crazy mind is so familiar that when I try to practice this concentration meditation that you're teaching us this weekend, my mind will go to the crazy place. And because it's so familiar, I'm there quite a while until I catch myself.
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions about how I can catch myself sooner?
Yeah. See, this whole thing is about developing and strengthening certain mental factors. Okay? And the only way to do that is through familiarizing ourselves with those mental factors. Yeah. And we do that through hearing we have to hear the teachings, then we have to practice them. So at the beginning, the two main mental factors you want to really work with are mindfulness. So at the beginning of your session, strongly putting your mind on the meditation object as much as you can, not squeezing like that little girl, but, just firmly deciding to put your mind on the object. And then the other one of introspective awareness, which pops up from time to time and surveys the situation and says, and observes, am I still in the object of meditation or am I in Never Never Land? Okay, so you have to train the mind, especially strongly in those two, to really put the mind on the object at the beginning. And then every once in a while, and you should probably do it more often at the beginning because the mind goes off so quickly, check up if we're still on the object or if we've gone off. And if we've gone off, then to renew the mindfulness and make it stronger. Yeah. The one of introspective awareness, it isn't like you're focusing on the Buddha, and then you stop and say to yourself, am I focused on the Buddha? Yeah. No, because at that point, then you've gone off the Buddha. So you keep your mind there, but then you just check from time to time, like a corner of your mind, am I there or have I gone off? Okay. Trying to think of some kind of example from in our life, where you're doing something. Oh, it's like when you drive and occasionally you check your mirror. Yeah. Except here we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards. Okay. But the same idea is you're concentrating here, but every so often a corner of your mind kind of checks and sees what's happening. And the only way to strengthen that is through practicing it. Yeah, there's no pill.
At the very beginning, when you spoke of the focus on the nostrils or the breath, for example, you talked that it's tactile, and Venerable Choni had that question about that. And I've found that that's a preferable object for me when I'm doing this. And my question is at some point, an image, a mental image appears. And what stage would that be at?
I don't know. I don't know the number of stage that would appear on. Our tradition doesn't speak so much of that. Yeah, that's more in the Pali tradition where they talk about that.
When you use the practice of loving kindness as your object, and then it says that when you have attained it, you have rebirth in the Brahma world. Is that one of the rebirth in the Brahma world?
And the Brahma world, okay.
Is that one of the four?
Brahma. Yeah. Okay. So of the four dhyana realms, Okay, they're divided into different groups. Yeah, 4 different groups. So the first group there's 17 altogether among the 4 dhyanas, and the first group have to do with Brahma, the Brahma world. Yeah. So by developing loving kindness, you can get born in that world if you want.
Can you go further with that meditation?
Can you what?
Go further with that meditation when you have the right motivation?
With love, I can't remember at this moment. It's in the book. Look under the Pali tradition section. I can't remember exactly if you can only attain the first dhyana or if you can go further with that object, because there's some objects where you can only go certain levels of the dhyana, and then other objects where you can do more.
This is just a technical issue from yesterday, or when we were reminded that when we're meditating, to have our eyes down in front of us, maybe slightly open. And when I do that and then start to imagine the Buddha in front of me at eye level, my eyes want to roll back into my head.
Okay.
Any advice?
Yeah. If your eyes, you don't want to roll your eyes back because you're going to get a headache. Okay. But it's like if you look at somebody in front of you, your eyes aren't rolled back.
They start to raise up rather than staying down.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they raise, that's okay, because you're not really looking at anything. Your eyes are just barely open to let some light in. Yeah. So you don't want to focus on looking at anything. You want to focus on the mental image of the Buddha.
Can you explain why the physical pliancy is a virtuous state?
Oh, the mental pliancy is the virtuous one. Yeah. The physical pliancy is, it's what happens in the body that makes the body very flexible. But the mental pliancy is the virtuous mental factor. The physical pliancy, I think, is a tactile sensation, or it may, yeah.
And would that mean that a sick person can't reach those states? Or
No.
Okay.
It means that if you deepen your concentration, you overcome how the normal feelings when you feel sick or when you're old. Okay. So it enables you to overcome all of that.
Regarding the same state, when we talk about it being a virtuous state, does that mean you're generating positive karma while you're in it? Are you also burning it? Or
No,
is it only generating it?
Yeah, you're generating it.
Okay, so you're not drawing on your stores.
Well, I think you probably had some store that helped you get there.
Yeah.
But once you have a virtuous mental factor manifesting in the mind, then you're creating virtuous karma.
A lot of what I experience that distracts me is not so much discursive thoughts. It's sort of physical sensations or mental sensations that pull at me, that are almost sort of like in front of the object. I don't hear that described or talked about a lot, and I can sort of ignore them and try to stay on the object, but it just feels slightly different than the mindfulness.
If it's physical sensations, isn't it in your body, not in front of your eyes?
Well, it's both. There are physical sensations, and there are also like visual or mental. It's hard to describe. It's like this low-level kind of movement.
Yeah. Okay. Our mind is very creative. Yeah. You sit to focus on the Buddha, you see cartoons, you see faces, you see all sorts of stuff, colors and designs, and, not everybody, thank goodness, but, the mind is distracted just because we're so familiar with sense objects. So it's just distraction. Yeah, that's all it is. We like to think that it's, something more, but it's not.
do you think that that's indicative of what needing to work with the grasping at sense objects?
Yeah, I think
specifically?
in general, to develop concentration, we really need to do something about, how hooked we are to sense objects. Yeah, and how much craving there is, how much our mind returns to think about those kinds of things, even in the break time. On the break time, during the break time, are you imagining a new car, and and a boat, and new ski equipment, and whatever it is? Yeah. Because if we do that in the break time, then, our visualization is getting very good, but of the wrong things. And
What about studying Tibetan during the break time? Thank you.
Okay, sure. Uh-huh.
So there's probably a lot to read on this topic, but you're here right now. So I'm wondering, I've been thinking about this through the chants and such. If one being is liberated or achieves enlightenment, how does that benefit everyone in samsara?
Okay. If you attain enlightenment and you have a motivation to be of great benefit to all sentient beings, then at the stage of enlightenment, you will have the ability to manifest many different kinds of bodies to go out and be of great benefit to others. And manifesting these bodies will come very spontaneously out of compassion. You won't have to sit and say, okay, it's Monday morning. I know it's Labor Day. I should have a day off, but I said I was going to benefit sentient beings. So who out there needs somebody to benefit them? And you scan the world and it's like, well, they're all asleep on this holiday morning. Oh, but there's some group at Sravasti Abbey, or there's some group over there in this country or that country. No, as a Buddha, whenever sentient beings have the karma and they are receptive, then a Buddha that they have karmic connection with appears. Not like, hi, I'm here. I'm a Buddha appearing to you. Okay. And you go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay. It's not like that. When Buddhas appear, we don't recognize them. Yeah. It's they appear in ordinary forms in whatever way can actually be of service to us. So we don't always recognize them. Yeah. But if somebody attains awakening, then, they have that ability. And because their mind is so purified, they know other beings' dispositions, their mental states, their tendencies, so they know how best to benefit others. They have the wisdom to do it. They have the compassion to do it. They don't hesitate. Yeah. So it becomes very easy then. Yeah. The problem is the beings you're trying to benefit, because they're kind of obstinate. And they're distracted and they want to do what they want to do and they don't feel like practicing what you're trying to teach them. And, all this. So that's the problem. Yeah. But from a Buddha's perspective, when we attain Buddhahood, from our perspective, then there won't be any difficulty.
Okay, this is a question almost suitable for the lightning round. And really, I should have asked it yesterday. Is it better to forgive or forget?
Forgive. Okay? Listen to how I'm defining forgiving. Forgiving is letting go of our anger towards someone. Okay? Forgiving does not mean what they did was okay. It does not mean we forget about what they did. Okay? Because it's important often to remember so we can learn something. But what we're doing when we forgive is we're deciding that we don't want to be angry about this anymore.
I have some concerns about some of the meditation practices that I've been dabbling with, not just on my own, but meditating without an object. I'm just wondering if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or
what kind of meditation is it?
Meditating without an object?
Yeah, but is it a Buddhist meditation?
Yes, yeah.
What's it called?
That's just the name of it.
Oh, I haven't heard of it. Yeah.
It's more resting without a specific object, more resting within your entire experience.
Yeah. And just observing what comes up. Yeah, sometimes they call that Dzogchen or Mahamudra or something like that. Yeah? Oh, why didn't you tell me that?
Because I'm still pretty new, and the terminology is difficult for me. So this is more of a Kagyu tradition.
Yeah. So that's usually a much higher level of meditation. Yeah, to do that, because it's not so easy. The mind easily gets distracted and hung up with different objects.
I just wanted to mention at the prison at Airway Heights, Judy teaches about with support or without support as a meditation. So with support being with an object, and without support being without an object.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something similar.
Maybe it has something. Yeah. In Tibetan Buddhism as a whole, there's many different kinds of meditations that the different groups, between Nyingma, Karya, Gyalу, and Sakya that they emphasize. So it could be something like that.
Just wanted to add, I looked into the book further, and in the end it says, if you combine it with the awakening factors, it can lead to final liberation from samsara.
If what?
If you combine, for example, the practice of loving kindness or compassion with the liberating factors, then it can lead to the liberation from samsara.
The liberating factors.
You call it awakening factors, yeah.
Okay, the 37 factors with awakening. Okay. So just this last thing. Within Buddhism, there's many different styles of meditation, okay? And so you might say, well, okay, in Theravada, they do shamatha and vipassana. But it depends which Theravada teacher you go to. Oh, well, these do vipassana, but they all have different ways of doing vipassana. And similarly, in the Tibetan tradition, Mahamudra or Dzogchen, but then different ways of doing different things. Okay? So, so there's just many different ways of doing things.